Wouldn't mind a red month for Bitcoin after this little extended run here. I wouldn't mind the red month. No, maybe next month is the red month. Maybe. It's nice to have red on the way up because that forms some sort of platform, some sort of base, some sort of areas of support if the price continues to go up. You know, just kind of like this little consolidation, like this red candle here was nice. These red candles are nice. They're nice because if the price tries to come back down, it's going to form support on that market structure. And so right now in this kind of expansive move up, it's just been green, 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 green. And on the weekly it's different. We had a little bit of red here, and so that's good. You want to see that kind of consolidation with red candles. So if the price does fall back down, it's still forming support here. That being said, you know, I don't necessarily want to see the price close underneath that previous high. So even though this week potentially could be forming a little bit of a bearish doji, dare I say it, and if we do see a little bit of a drop, I kind of want to see how this holds, because next week, if we come in, test, and then just close back above the week close back into that range, then it's okay. Then it's just a little bit of a sell-off. We're still consolidating, and then it potentially could continue. But we have to see how that plays out on the local time frame. I think in terms of the higher time frame, so when I go back to the index, let me just delete these this stuff. If I pull off so there's a few things that I'm looking at now on Bitcoin, and let's have a look at this Bollinger Band as well. So when we had our we had a little bit of an expansive move here. You see this expansive move here. This one. This is the one that people are looking forward to. The moonshot. The moon move, right? And even though we had an all-time high here, you're still quite late in the move if you entered just when the all-time, like, it already done 50% before you actually breach the all-time high to do another 50%. Effectively, you have a little bit of a, from here to here you have a 50%, and you kind of have a 50% there. Yeah. And so I think people are looking at this and they don't want to, like, it looks very similar in the sense that you have this and then this, and now we're kind of at the first peak, which is there. Could this be a small shorter version of this, and that's the first peak there? Are we at this first peak here? The difference here is we didn't take the peak. We kind of corrected before it hit the peak. Whereas now we've actually, it was maybe we've had a correction and maybe we're now just trying to break through. But we never really made a red candle as the price expanded. And it'd be interesting to see how this continues here. Slightly different, but the position is correct. So when you look at when you're looking at where the price is in with respect to the Bollinger Band, you want to be in the top part, pressing against the top extent of the Bollinger Band. You want to be, that's kind of where you want to be. The price isn't going to go from here to the lower part of the Bollinger Band to an expansion. The price has to be in the top part of the Bollinger Band, pressing against the top part of the Bollinger Band for an expansion like that. So we are in the right kind of position for that. And I don't think I want to see the price to lose this midpoint of this Bollinger Band now. I don't really want to see that. I almost think when I'm looking at the price action, I almost think that this COVID drop has happened. It was this. That was it. I see similarities in how this went up and then dropped. And then the drop here obviously was compounded by the macro. I almost think that's the drop. And then we're kind of here. We're kind of here now. And then maybe we've dropped. And we're kind of coming back up here. And I almost think that this peak corresponds to that peak. There is a little bit of similarity in the way the price is moving. It's something to bear in mind when it comes to looking at the price. If I go to the monthly time frame and have a look at the monthly time frame. So the one thing I don't like about the monthly time frame is that when you're looking at the expansion from here, you did have a pullback from the top of the Bollinger Band to go back up. And I'm just wondering if that's... No, that can't be it, because it lost the midpoint. That's where you lose the midpoint. You come back up. Do we go back down to the midpoint? Which is that? I can't tell. But again, with the monthly time frame, we are in the right place for some kind of, like, that's where you want to be. You want to be in the top part of the Bollinger Band. If we want an expansion, this is where you want to be. You want to be here. You're not going to get an expansion if we're here. It's not going to happen. Yeah. The best thing that can happen when you're in the lows is you go back up to the highs. Yeah. But when you want to expand, we're in the right place. We are in the right place. I do feel like I want to see a red month, actually. And the red month would signify... And what's interesting about the previous price action is from the previous halving, which was in May, here, this was the halving, you had 2 red months that followed. 2. This one and this one. And we haven't had the halving yet. The halving's in 2 months' time. But I'm just wondering if we do have like 1 or 2 red months before we go to the moon. So I am like thinking to myself, there is a little bit of difference right now between the way the price is coming up here. I do think we need a little bit of pullback, and I wouldn't mind if we can, if this midpoint of this monthly kind of, if we can get close, I think that would be a bit better. So I am seeing similarities, but I would like to see a little bit of a pullback, unfortunately, dare I say it. Now, something that I was thinking about, if you take the distance from this midpoint where the price held to the highs, I'm just wondering if we do the same thing. I'm wondering if we basically do exactly the same. and that would put us at a crazy number. That's a crazy number. And I'm just thinking, when I look at the previous price action, good morning, B. How's it going? I don't know if we did the same thing from previous times. So I am looking at it from, so look, so this is where the price held, and this is the high, thereabouts. So if we go in a straight line, so it didn't do it. It didn't do the same distance. See that? It's 50%, 50 or 60% less. No, 40% less, potentially. Let me have a look here. Potentially there, in a straight line to the highs. See that? So there was a drop off. And here there's a drop off too, if you see that. So there wasn't a complete, there wasn't an absolute, there was no replication of the way the price moved. And even this one, there was a little bit of a drop off there. See that? So based on that idea, if I was to take this here, from there to there, from there to there. Okay, no. So let me do it like this. So from here to there, roughly there. So we kind of, I don't know, we kind of come into about 100,000. If you're kind of following the same kind of pattern, where you have it about, you're basically 60% of the previous expansion. I'm just guessing, I'm just roughly guessing. This is 60% of the previous expansion. This is about 60% of the previous expansion. This was about 60% of the previous expansion. Maybe this is going to be about 60% of the previous expansion. And if this expansion that I'm thinking of is from where the Bollinger, the midpoint of the monthly Bollinger Band holds a support to the high, and take that to there where this holds a support, kind of roughly we're looking at 100,000, and that's it. And that would follow this pattern. And so the question is, does this pattern break? But this is kind of what I'm imagining, which would follow the pattern. Let me have a look at some other things. I can't remember what I've done. Some flips. Trend base of extension. B is asking, can you have a look at Quang's? Oh, it was a breakout? Shit. I should have bought some, huh? I was bullish recently. This is gone now. SR flips. I kind of want there to be more of an expansion, actually. I'm trying to figure out if we can have more of an expansion. think the easiest way to just calculate, I think the simplest way, and this is probably, you know, the simplest way is often the best way. You just do a really easy fib extension, and your first expansive target is the 1.272 at $103,616, and this is on the index, so these figures are thereabouts. So I think probably I'm thinking to myself 100,000. That's my moon target for Bitcoin, and that would coincide with this kind of this idea. Now the question is, do we see a super cycle? And I've seen these super cycle graphs online, and now let me just pull it up. Super cycle Bitcoin map. Let me just have a look, because I've seen these graphs and I'm really curious about them. Let me see if I can find a good one. Got it. Let me copy it and paste it. So the idea of a super cycle is that you have your, you can see the circles, the half circles. You have your cycles, you have your mini cycles, you have the mini, these are the mini cycles, then you have your larger cycles, and then you have your bigger cycles, and that's called the super cycle. Super cycle doesn't mean it's going to go up and never come back down. Again, it's a cycle, so it goes up and it goes down. Yeah, so I've seen this kind of chart flow around, and I'm just not, I have no idea and so it doesn't necessarily also mean that the price is going to come right back down to zero. It's just identifying the peaks and the troughs, the highs and the lows. So according to this, we had the low corresponding to here, we had the low corresponding to here, we had the low corresponding to here, and low corresponding to here. So there's a very kind of cyclical behavior with the lows, and then you have cyclical behavior with the highs. If you see how this semicircle, I mean, this was a bit later, but there you have the high that corresponds to there. Potentially you're looking at the high, putting in the high in October. Now I don't know if this means that we're going to, like, what you might be like. I think people need to understand, like, even though this idiot's put stupid numbers on this chart, and obviously this chart's in log, okay, so it's effectively it's the same chart that I've got here. If you look at this chart, if I get rid of my brush strokes and I'll get rid of the Bollinger Band, all right, you can see it's basically the same chart that I've got here. And I don't think super cycle means we're going to the moon, in the sense that we're going to crazy numbers. I think super cycle just simply means that this is the peak of the super cycle. So I think the word super is wrong. It's misleading. I think super is just like, these are mini cycles, these are medium cycle, maybe higher time frame cycle would be better. And so effectively what you're saying is this is the peak of this higher time frame cycle. That's the peak. That's what this is saying. We're at the peak. This is gonna, this next cycle, this October, whenever this peak happens, will be the peak of this whole move. And then you'll be looking for this. Now, does that mean it can't go up? It does mean it doesn't. Yeah, I mean, I can't tell. I can't tell. I don't really understand it because I mean, if you look at these, you peaked, but the price still went up. See, you peaked here. You peaked here. The price still went up. It didn't go down just because, but it's all with respect to itself. And I think that's what people need to understand. Yeah. This is relative. So if we're peaking here at 100,000, for the sake of argument, let's say we're peaking here. It would be like us peaking here on this mini cycle. And so the idea of this super cycle, if this is correct, would be that over here, you should somehow be lower. I don't know. I don't know. I don't really understand this, actually. It doesn't really make sense because I can't imagine that Bitcoin in 2040 is going to be lower than $100,000. That doesn't make any sense to me. So I think I need to do more research on this concept, on this idea of super cycle. Let me just quickly do a Google search. What is a super cycle? Quickly, the Motley Fool. Let's have a look. The global economy tends to be very cyclical. These pop-ups. Meaning it is prone to alternating periods of boom and bust. The four stages of an economic cycle are expansion, peak, contraction, and trough. Example of an economic supercycle. The last major economic supercycle began around 2002 when China entered an extended period of economic growth. This economic supercycle ended around 2015. Okay, so I think a supercycle actually means that if a supercycle begins, then actually the price is going to go up until the end, which is potentially there. Doesn't mean it's going to follow the same path and going up and down. Potentially it will still go cyclical, but it will start to go up more rapidly. I think that's what this is saying. Commodity supercycles are driven by supercycles in the broader economy, characterized by sustained rising demand. So what we need is sustained rising demand. I mean, it is possible, huh? Because there is sustained rising demand on crypto. Potentially, we're going to see a crypto super cycle, potentially. Just don't know what it's going to look like. I don't think it's going to be like this. That doesn't make any sense. Potentially, you're still going to go up. And maybe we break. And I'm thinking maybe we break. And I think the real test of whether we break or not, for me, will be this. Okay, so just looking at the way the patterns have formed in the past, I think whether we break or not will depend on this expansion here. Okay, so this is the test. You have this back test of this Bollinger here. You have this expansion to the highs there. So naturally, I'm expecting about a 60% increase, which would follow the previous markets. So you're looking at the same thing from there to the high there. If you copy that across, it's about 60%. It goes 60% higher than the previous expansion. So based on that really crude logic, that's our target, which is 100k. Very crude logic. Very rough. So I think we're going to know if we are in a super cycle, if this breaks. It'll be very easy to see if this breaks, because I think if we start going above 100,000 and we start flipping higher levels, then I would suggest that it's starting to break. And maybe then you could argue that we are in a super cycle. And I think that's what people want to see. What would determine a super cycle? And I think that will be exciting actually for most people to know when a super cycle happens, right? And so from this, the other thing I'm looking at now is from this peak to this low here, we actually hit the 1.618 expansion. From this peak here to this low here, we hit the 1 to 2 expansion. You see that? Very expansive move into 2017. From this peak here to this low here, I mean, we went way above the 1 to 2, but that's probably, if I calculate that and add some more numbers for that, $1.272. See that? 2.272. Very expansive. So our expansions are in decline. That's what I'm seeing right now. We're getting less expansive moves. And I think the first test is going to be whether we are less expansive or just as expansive. If we're just as expansive, then you could argue that maybe we are going to see some kind of super cycle. And so I think that's going to be the test. The real test for me will be how the price behaves in my first resistance level here. 103,000. I want to see how the price behaves. If we have a clear rejection there, and that's the peak, and then you just can't get past it, then there is no super cycle. That's it. And we just have a less expansive move, which is just exactly what we're expecting. That's the expectation. The expectation is that less expansive. But if a super cycle idea is in play, then what do you want to do? Well, you want to flip resistance into support. That will be the first test. So I have a very clear fib extension line. And if I take the previous market now, okay, this is the monthly time frame. So a monthly close above that 1.272. And you see how the price expanded all the way to the 1.414, and you see how it sold, but it still closed above the 1.272. Do you see that? Sorry, just had to respond to a message. That was, and you had the same thing here. You said in the same month here, it expanded all the way up to the 1.618, and it came back to close above the 1.414. Okay, the behavior here it closed above the 1.272, back tested, expanded, closed above the didn't close above the 1.414, but then it expanded and closed above the 1.618. This red candle was very deceptive, and then it just expanded all the way up to the 2.272. That was very expensive. The clear sign of rejection is, look, do you see how in the highs here on the fib extension from this 2017 peak to the bear market low in 2018, you have a clear failure on the monthly time frame to close above the 1.618. Very clear failure on two occasions, on two separate occasions. We had a clear rejection into that 1.618 level. Yeah, there was a lot of bearish signs in the highs here. You had a rejection of the 1.618. You had a swing failure of this previous high, and you had quite a bearish monthly candle in the second run up to the highs. This red kind of wide-bodied doji is very bearish in the highs. It indicates some kind of reversal. That was it closed at about $57,000. It's very bearish. So you had a lot of indications of reversal, and I think that's what we want to see now. We want to see how the price behaves into these levels, okay? And we want to see that on the monthly time frame. It's really important, the monthly time frame. I think people get too focused on even today I'm looking at the local time frame on Bitcoin, and I'm planning a trade, and I'm just looking at I'm not like, this is just like simple day trading. This is nothing, I'm not really, this doesn't change my bias. You go up, you go down, you go up, you go down. It doesn't really matter. What really matters for people to realize is the higher time frame. The higher time frame is what matters. Nothing else matters. So what happens on the monthly time frame determines everything. What happens on the higher time frames determines it, right? And you can see clearly in the previous bull market, we had a clear rejection of the 1.618 extension. On two separate occasions, the price failed to close above that very definite level. And if I was to look at the previous bull market, from there to there, if I do an extension, look, the price has failed the 2.272. See that? And then on this monthly candle, you have a full monthly reversal close back below the previous monthly high. That's a reversal pattern right there. Okay, so there are signs on the monthly time frame of reversal, and we will be able to see it. We'll be able to see it together because we're looking at the monthly time frame. We're not going to get boggled down on the 8-hour time frame, or on the 4-hour time frame, or on the 15-minute time frame, or even on the daily time frame. What we'll be looking at is the monthly time frame. We'll be looking at the higher time frame levels. We'll be looking at the candle patterns and the candle formations and the volume on those candles to try to see if, when the time comes, we're going to be in a super cycle or not. And I think for me, if we are to repeat last bull market's expansion, then there would be a significant shift in the behavior. Yeah, so the last bull market, when I did an expansion from the 2017 peak to the bear market low, The expansion was to the 1.618 at 60, just above $62,000. It expanded and couldn't close above the 1.618. I'm not expecting that this time round because of diminishing returns in the expansive nature of Bitcoin. Yeah, I'm not expecting that. So what does that mean? Well, that means that if we see the same behavior, that's different. And that's a significant shift in what you're expecting. Yeah. If we suddenly see the price push up, and then now we're at 107. Okay, now we can start talking about super cycle because this is different. And actually, I think if we start getting above the 1.414 at $128,000, that would already be a big difference in my mind. I think the minute you flip that level into support, you're going to the 1.618. And if you go to the 1.618, then maybe you're going higher. Maybe then we are talking about some kind of mad super cycle. And that's the only time that I start thinking about a super cycle is if we start flipping this 1.272 into support. I don't really expect the price if the price action is to continue and to behave in accordance with the history of Bitcoin. This time round, I'm not expecting the price to push past the 1.272. Really, I don't think that makes sense. Just simply because of what I said before. When you lay up the Bollinger Band and you look at where the price held at the midpoint, and then you see how far it expanded to the highs. Yeah. I don't expect it to do the same thing because it hasn't done the same thing in the past. In the past, you've had about a 40% reduction in the expansion. And in my mind, that pretty much lands us here. Pretty much. A 40% reduction is probably around there. That would be correct to the previous price action. If you do the same thing, roughly, and then you just take that, you see it's about a 40% reduction on that whole expansion. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing. There's a very similarity, and that's basically diminishing returns. So we have to just see how Bitcoin behaves, and then we also have to see if this super cycle idea is in play or not. We'll know simply because, where's that image? Doesn't matter, I've lost it, probably deleted it because it's rubbish. But simply because if we are going to see a super cycle, it's a big if, yeah, and I think people need to be aware that in the peak of the bull market, everyone is going to be calling for a super cycle. That chart that I shared is going to you're going to start seeing that everywhere. So let me just put it up as well, just to make you guys aware of this chart, this super cycle chart. And I'm going to do more research on this and analyze this more in the future because we need to know, we need to know whether we're going to be in one or not, because that's going to determine how we take profits, and that's going to determine when we take profits as well. And so basically this is the chart that everyone's going to start seeing a lot in the future, this super cycle chart. And effectively what this suggests is that this time is different. This time we're going to start seeing some crazy expansion. That's the suggestion. There's going to be a shift. Maybe this is that what people will be calling for is a break of the pattern, of this pattern, and instead of some kind of diminishing returns, you're going to get some kind of blow off top. That will be what a super cycle would indicate. And I think anything like, if you're going up to like the 1.618, that's going to look pretty blow off toppy. If we get up there and then just push up. Maybe like a blow off top. You have to see. All right. There's some things to bear in mind. All right, so that is I think that's Bitcoin. I'm in a short right now on Bitcoin.